Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our May 6th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Babalani?
Here.
Before we get into the regular meeting this evening, we have a committee meeting of the whole to discuss the electric system master plan update. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Dave Krause here this evening from KPE to help us or to go over the updated master plan. If you remember, a number of years back, we had a master plan written up, and then we had the hydro go offline, and that sort of instantaneously modified the priorities within the plan. So last year, Mr. Krause went through and accounted for that hydro project being completed, and we thought going into budget hearings, we should probably revisit that plan. So Dave, if you want to come on up and lead the discussion.
Good evening. Doesn't seem like that long ago I stood before council and talked about the first electric system master plan, but that was 10 years ago, so time flies when you're having fun. I believe you have a copy of the master plan document, hopefully in your packets. I'll be brief in my comments, and I guess as always when I'm before you, as questions arise, just cut me off, say, hey Dave, or however you get me to stop, and I'll address your questions as best I can. The last electric utility master plan, as I stated, was completed in 2003. There have been several items recommended and completed since 2003 that improved the performance and the efficiency of the electric distribution system. For those of you who were on council in 2003, there were a couple of planning items or performance goals that were set when we reviewed the electric utility system, including development of a system that was efficient. We recognized there were a lot of power losses in the electric distribution system, and so power that was generated at the hydro plant was being consumed in the system. It wasn't available to supply your customers or ultimately be resold onto the grid in terms of excess power. And so one of the planning goals that we set was to look at projects that improve the efficiency of the system to improve the bottom line of the utility. The second goal we set in evaluating the electric distribution system was to identify issues where performance was subpar or substandard. From a reliability standpoint, from a service voltage level standpoint, in other words, when you flick the light switch or plug in a piece of equipment, it runs and it runs adequately. And during the 2003 discussions, there were and continue to be several areas in the electric distribution system that in peak times or in peak conditions don't have adequate power available such that we expect the equipment will run properly or within its design limits, and we'll talk more in detail about some of those areas. The third piece of that master plan concept was to scope or develop projects that could be addressed or managed or constructed with in-house labor. Wherever we could, we wanted to look at the system and construct it in ways that when projects needed to be built, that they could be done in-house as best we can. And in the work that's been done since 2003, I'm only aware of 2 projects as defined where we had to get outside resources. We had the voltage conversion project on the west end of the service territory, west of where the new substation is. That's a large radial piece of line where to control the outage time, we brought in contract crews. And then in 2011, we completed the loop conversion, and that was a large amount of work. 13 miles of line had to be had to be touched, and so you brought some contract labor in to help you there. So those were the, I guess, broad-based planning criteria, and there's some more detail that's spelled out in the master plan in terms of the particular items that we look at when we evaluate the distribution system. In summary, given the changes that you've made, the improvements you've made, we're still projecting in the next 10 years an estimated $3.4 million in capital improvements to the electric system to remedy issues that have not to date been corrected, or to improve performance and reliability in the electric distribution system. There are several more voltage conversion projects where local distribution is at 2400 volts, and the recommendation is to increase that service voltage to the 14,400 volt line like the main loop runs. That's going to improve load serving capacity, improve service voltage, and reduce system losses. In addition to that, there are several what I'll characterize as system improvements done at the hydro plant. Most of the work that's been done at the plant within the last 10 years has been generator or machine specific. So you get a mechanical reconstruction on unit 1 or unit 2, unit 3. There's some integrated plant controls, but the system at the plant, the main collector system, the main DC control system has seen some minor relocations, but really hasn't been upgraded yet. And so there are recommendations in the master plan to round out the work at the hydro plant to get the plant current. And obviously if the main collector system goes out, doesn't matter what the individual units are doing, the plant is offline. So there are recommendations that are broader, looking at the entire collector system in the plant. We have, with the construction of the main substation, recognized that when that project went online, a decision was made to purchase the main power transformer, that's the main power supply, into Norway, and to not have a spare for that piece of equipment. Failure of that transformer will render all of Norway's electric service territory out of power until a spare can be found and secured. And so we've allocated dollars in this capital plan to recognize that risk. And when an opportunity presents itself for a suitable spare to be purchased, that be completed. So you've got the ability to respond to that outage. There was an event like that, I don't remember, Joe, 3-4 years ago for We Energies over at Aragon, where they had a transformer fire, and the subsequent outages were relatively lengthy. So we recognize those risks, and this is a risk management proposition, so things are running fine. We're not aware of any immediate catastrophes occurring, but when something happens, that's identified. So with that, the master plan again identifies several items that were addressed and constructed in the last 10 years, including the new substation, the loop. A couple of the localized substations were converted and eliminated, which took care of the worst case overloads and the worst case service voltage or capacity issues in the system. When I was here for the 2011 loop conversion project, it was summertime, loads were high, it was hot out, and we took an opportunity to make field measurements on the remaining substations to see what their load levels were. At that time, we saw loads on those unit substations from 75 to 156% of their rating. And when you load electrical equipment to over 100%, you shorten up its lifespan or its life expectancy. Electrical equipment, all electrical equipment, the insulation will fail, and the rate at which it's driven to failure is based on how much heat is inside that equipment. So when we have hot weather, we run with high loads, we run with overloads, we generate more internal heat in that equipment, and it just accelerates the degradation in the life of that equipment. So when we have items that are loaded over 100%, we're significantly shortening up their lifespan. And I can tell you, looking at the master plan, when that failure occurs, you do not have online capacity to simply switch some lines and restore power. Those failures will require equipment replacements, which will take time, and those outages will be lengthy. So the master plan recognizes that. It recognizes some opportunities to do construction, to alleviate some of the loads, so when the failure occurs, it's more of an operating exercise to switch the lines over, get the lights back on, and then develop the plan to replace the failed equipment. But that unfortunately requires a certain amount of capital investment. From a service voltage standpoint, there are several areas in Norway service territory that continue to suffer from low service voltage. Low service voltage, I think, is best described as a condition where if you turn on a piece of equipment, if it were a television screen, for example, the screen's picture would be shrunk. Lights would be dim or somewhat brown. Motors won't run or will run intermittently and drop out. So low service voltage is a measure of the inadequacy, if you will, of the distribution system. To summarize those areas, from the North Brown substation, which is just north of the utility shop, all the areas north of the tracks, this is out north of Pine Creek Road, Perney Lane, the whole north end of the service territory. When it's hot out, when loads are high, those areas suffer from low service voltage. And we've heard from customers and have made field measurements that verify the computer model. So this isn't just the computer model saying this is a problem. That area was identified in the 2003 system study and continues to have issues. WPA Road, basically from the cemetery south and west, the model predicts low service voltage areas. And last summer, during hot weather, there were customer complaints of low service voltage in those areas. Mr. Pickert and I had a discussion and had a mitigation plan in place as part of the master plan. Part of that was executed to alleviate the immediate needs by installing another step down. So again, that's some validation that what the model predicted did occur. And although it's been mitigated in the short term, I would call it not a permanent solution. I guess more of a Band-Aid or a 2 or 3 days worth of construction to get by.
Dave, on those 5 areas, are those listed in priority?
There is
First one.
there is a priority list in the capital plan that I can talk to. I guess low service voltage, when we get to that point, it's kind of an all or nothing proposition. So if your equipment doesn't run and you live north of town and the mayor's equipment doesn't run and he's on WPA Road as an example, you're both in the
But
same
I mean,
boat.
is it listed
So
by population, the amount of population in those
No.
areas? Is it,
it is not. It
you
is-
think it should be for prioritizing it?
I don't know. I haven't considered it impacted by customers in the priority list. I think what you'll see is more a recognition of the construction effort and the capital expenditures it'll take to correct it, and the amount of time that would take. So feedback, obviously, from council if there's some additional prioritization that you need to see or comes out through the budget discussions.
I would think that, you know, if you have more customers affected by, say, up in the boundary line area, that should be, if it's about the same cost,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you probably should prioritize them like that.
Okay, very good. There are a couple other areas that are mentioned in the study. The east end of Vulcan, the single phase that's east of Cherry Street, that's another area that some short-term mitigation was installed in at the end of summer in 2011, I believe.
2011.
Again, customer complaints, chronic low service voltage, and we took some short-term steps to shore that area up. The west end of Oak Crest Drive is an area that's been identified, and lastly, the west end on Piers Gorge. These are, again, at the ends or at the extremes of the distribution system. They're they're not on the main line or the 24/9 loop. They're localized service areas that it's a combination of system loads and hot weather and age and condition on facilities. So there are some other items outlined within the study. A couple in particular that I'll mention. We've identified some code issues related to overhead lines crossing railroad facilities. The code has certain strength requirements for crossings of railroad tracks, and we have some installations that don't meet that, so we need to replace some poles and cross arms and make those structures stronger where they cross railroad facilities, and those items need to be updated. Lastly, in reviewing the entire distribution system, especially through the loop conversion, we recognize that there are no records of strength assessment on any of the existing wood poles. The code requires utilities that own and operate wood poles to assess their condition and strength as your experience dictates. In the industry, that's every 10 to 15 years. We typically bring in a contractor and drill a couple holes in at the ground line of the pole to see rot and deterioration. The ground line is where we cycle from freeze to thaw, and there's a lot of moisture captured in the base of the pole. And I've been across the entire system and have yet to find any indication or records that the poles have ever been strength tested. So even when you look at the main line loop, that 13 miles that is the foundation of the utility, that line was constructed in the 1980s, is going on 30 years old, and even those newer of the facilities we have out there have no condition assessment. We'd expect a 1% failure rate on an every 10 to 15 year test, so we're predicting based on our experience that there's 10 to 20 poles out there that need identification or replacement. And obviously, we get some bad weather, those structures fail, causes outages, interrupts the hydro plant, causes damage and those types of things that we want to address and mitigate. With that, the master plan identifies needs by priority. In attempting to address your question, that's on page 10 of the study. Classified projects as priority 1 or immediate needs, which include the pole testing, some more work out in Vulcan to shore up service voltage levels, a recommendation down on WPA Road, which was constructed in 2012, correcting the railroad crossings, the code strength issues, some work down at the hydro plant on the main control collector system to separate it, so if an individual machine or generator needs to be taken offline, that we can isolate it not only mechanically but also electrically to work on it. And in talking with Mr. Pickert, we identified that you're facing some staff turnover, a group that has worked together for an extended period of time and has a fundamental understanding of the construction standards and the requirements for how lines need to be built to operate this system. We really don't have documentation of that. And so we identified a need to develop and document the construction standards that the utility needs to build to, so as you have staff turnover, if you wind up bringing in contractors for a significant amount of work, that you can give them a document that shows them how the parts and pieces are to be used and be assembled. And so that's identified as a short-term or a priority 1 need, again, based on continuation of the capital plan and staff changes. In priority 2, identified as SIP or capital improvement required work, the overload at the North Brown substation, that's a 25% overload that serves everything north of town. We've got a plan to alleviate that overload, do some conversion work to develop some efficiencies and extend the useful life of the system in that part of town. Vulcan area reconstruction and conversion, again, we constructed a short-term remedy, but it's not a long-term solution. That item is identified. We are in progress on the relocation of the building that was associated with the old We Energies interconnection. down to the hydro plant to provide a space or a building to house the controls and protection we need to support the hydro plant and its reliability. So it's an existing building that you hadn't operated. It's been relocated, and we just need to round up installing the controls to complete the hydro plant substation. Oak Crest Drive in West Piers Gorge, some conversion work identified there. That's again significant reconstruction work to correct overloads and low service voltage. And then the last item in the priority 2 is replacement of the protective relays associated with all the generators in the main at the hydro plant. We've had several operations at the hydro plant over the last 2 years where our inability to collect time-stamped information as to the sequence of events on what caused the hydro plant to go offline is hampered because of the relays that are installed. They were adequate and suitable technology at the time they were installed at the hydro plant, but we've come 10 plus years down the road, and the new technologies allow satellite synchronized time stamping and sequence of events that'll tell us what happened first, what the cause and effects were in the plant to help us diagnose any plant deficiencies or respond more quickly to get the plant back online.
Dave, does the estimate of $650,000 for the Oak Crest Drive improvements and updates, does that amount reflect the development out there of undeveloped property that the city owns?
That budget estimate and that reconstruction would allow you to develop whatever isn't developed out there and serve it.
Okay. It
It does not include a project that I know was mentioned and discussed at council regarding some service territory of another utility that's within the city limits. That's identified in the non-prioritized work.
Okay.
So it's outside of that, but once that area is reconstructed and converted to 24/9, it'll have plenty of load serving capacity. The priority 3 work is more reconstruction. These are projects where we do not have service performance issues other than system inefficiencies and higher losses due to the low operating voltage. So these are economically driven, not performance driven. And then the priority 4 bid work includes the spare power transformer that we talked about, and puts a capital placeholder out there to recognize that the electrical switch gear in the hydro plant is 1960s vintage. It sees a lot of duty, it sees a lot of operations. Every time a generator comes on or offline, that switch gear operates, and at some point in time you will want to replace it. Not aware of short-term performance issues with the hydro plant switch gear itself, but equipment's 50 years old, it keeps getting older, and at some point in time it'll need to be replaced. Strategically, to be able to develop a plan and replace that equipment before it fails is going to save a lot of downtime for, at best, generators 3 and 4, because they're on an isolated piece of switchgear. If it were to fail, generators 1 and 2, the 2 big units, are in the same piece of switchgear as the main breaker for the entire plant. So if that gear fails electrically and it has to be replaced, the whole plant's out of service for months. That will be a very lengthy procurement process.
For a time frame, Dave, what would you say for like picking up the spare transformer there and then the work down at the hydro switchgear? A couple of years we should wait, or?
Well, spare power transformer can be purchased anytime. What I do, I get networked into different suppliers, and I just keep an eye out. When I see something that looks interesting and the price looks reasonable, I'll bring it back to the city and just say, hey, I saw this unit. You know, if we get an opportunity purchase at say $150,000 and have an electrically okay spare, the hope is we never use it.
Yeah.
That's the goal. The risk management and the insurance side of it, weigh the purchase price against the risk. So I see that as an opportunity. The switchgear replacement, the hydro plant, like I say, we have no impending operational concerns about it. But gear that's 50 years old can go from it's working fine one day to something happens, and I think it's important when I review the system to bring to you that there is risk in that 50-year-old equipment. And financially, it's substantial, because if you lost the main gear, lost the whole plant, and the whole plant outlet for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, well, you know what those dollars look like, so. So the attempt was there to recognize, again, the capital investment. Gear's gonna take 16 to 32 weeks once you can spec it out to procure it and get it here and delivered, and then you're still looking at a plant outage to affect the swap. So that's probably a one-year proposition from the time you tee it up to when you're done with it. So, there are other projects in priority 5. They're not prioritized for short term. Again, they are more efficiency improvement projects, reconstruction projects on aging condition types of facilities, and their outline moving forward. I think it's important to note in this capital plan, this is a 10-year capital plan for the prioritized needs. There's another 10 years of work outlined behind that, and once all of that work was completed, now we're at a point where the main distribution loop in the system that was constructed in the 1980s is 50 years old, and it probably starts all over again. So at 50 years for an electric distribution system, a pole line, we can anticipate it'll be at a point where it'll need to be reconstructed. So we've done a lot of work in the last 10 years, made some significant system improvements. You're improving efficiency at a time when power supply costs are on the rise. Strategically, it was a good move. The next 10 plus years are reconstruction and efficiency projects, and we can see on the tail end of that the core of the system is all of a sudden 50 years old, and it'll need attention, and that's how electric distribution systems age and get attention. So with that, the capital expenditures are summarized again by priority, roughly 3.4, 3.5 million in short-term needs. The overall 10-year projection is almost $12 million based on 2012 capital dollars. And we can see the loop reconstruction piece behind that. That's outside the scope of the study at this point. So with that, I'm open to any more questions that you might have, questions, comments.
Would you, you were talking about the losses earlier. Would you quantify the losses in today's dollars in energy that we cannot sell to our customers and or need to purchase off the grid to make up for those losses, what that might equate in a dollar value if they were corrected?
Correction on the system losses, and there are different pieces to it. For the items that are outlined in the capital plan, current dollars, I'm estimating $100,000 a year in lost savings. That's money that goes to your power supplier that could be retained by your ratepayers or gets offset in the power cost adjustment. That's in the short term. Complete construction of the plan on current power supply dollars is going to push that number closer to $200,000 a year. So it's real money, and we expect as power supply costs increase, the value in those losses increases as well. So again, it would be difficult to get everything constructed today to take advantage of the lost savings, but there are definitely strategic things that can be done in the short term to improve the bottom line of the utility. And other than, I guess, Mr. Baldwin's question about the population behind the service performance areas, think the priorities that are developed and outlined are in concert with the planning criteria. Fix the problem areas and issues, make the system more efficient, and scope projects in pieces that, for the most part, could be managed with internal staff.
Is there anybody with our type of system that the switchgear would be the same, that you know of?
Not switchgear that is laying around and available, no. I mean, switchgear is manufactured every day, but their switchgear is not an item like a
Has to be
transformer.
tailor-made, pretty much?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, we're looking at a generation facility, so there are some additional requirements for protecting generators that might not apply to switchgear used for distribution feeder, for example.
Joe, on the priority one projects that we were supposed to be budgeted for 2012, 2013, were any of those in the budget for this year?
I started to work on that and started to put some monies in the budget to work on the priorities list. And to answer it, yes, we're starting to address that, yes. So,
Dave, your page 8 under operating needs, you've got on your base labor without any project construction work is 6.1 people in the electric department as the base working staff level. I don't know if you know it, but we've got some issues right now because of labor contracts, but this 6.1 people for our system, is that included like supervision, billing clerk, or is that actual working men out there, linemen or groundmen, whatever you want to call them?
That review is based on working staff, and in that review, I outlined the allocation of working hours and the different tasks that are associated with them. And then we factor in a certain amount of training time, PTO, time off, those things, and basically work backwards to calculate that time. That is not ENS time, engineering supervision time, if you will. That's workforce labor time.
And that's what you're basically recommending to run this system, the 6.1.
Based on the review that I conducted and my understanding of the work volumes, in large part those are operating hours, so requests to do locates, the billing, the metering questions, those types of operating questions are there. There are a certain number of hours per year built in to construct part of the capital improvement plan that's identified as again, in-house construction, or the tasks that can be handled with an in-house staff.
So actual linemen, what does that mean? I know you threw in the office staff, you threw in clinical. Actual linemen, what do you think we should have?
Well, this plan covered two areas, or I guess three areas. It's got the electric utility, it's got the cable TV and operations, and the hydro operations. So at 6.1, I've got roughly 3 PTO equivalents, if you will, covered between hydro operations and cable. The assumption is that you have the ability to train or cross-train that staff. So if there's higher needs in the cable area, that you can do work out of the cable area, or more, I'll call it a more technical support type position. The hydro operations, as you're seeing the last week, is a lot of raking and cleaning and managing the hydro plant.
So
Oh, I
what
don't-
you're saying though is, just for linemen, groundmen, you're saying we should have 6? Just to do the work, to be on the ground people. That's your recommendation, is we should have 6?
What I've said in the operating needs is, in the statements on the bottom of page 8, second to last paragraph, base labor without any project construction work is 6.1 people. So that's no construction. That's
just operating what we're doing now.
correct.
What you just said, Dave, that you were throwing the cable TV guys in there, in that 6.1, but,
I did.
you know, we can't use cable TV guys for linemen, for obvious reasons, so I mean, you know, they're
So-
not qualified.
So then the
I mean,
adjustment,
even cross-training, you can cross-train them till you're blue in the face, but they don't have the schooling, so I don't know what you're gonna do with a cable guy on the pole.
they may not currently have the cross-training for energized line work. I think there are a lot of tasks where if they had the time and the opportunity, they could augment a crew, whether it's pole framing and setting, traffic control. You look at some locating tasks, some of the items that are outlined as a labor resource requirement.
So you're
And,
taking out of the 6.1, you're taking the two cable guys that we have in there included, right? That's what you
Correct.
just said.
Yep, I've got 1.5 column FTs, for lack of a better term, in cable, and 1.5 in the hydro plant.
So we actually should have a total of 4 people just in the electric department
With no construction work,
with no construction.
correct,
Okay.
according to my review. Obviously, the numbers are subject to review by others, so. Yep,
I just wanted to add, my voice is starting to go, so bear with me here, that since this was done over a year ago, and the introduction of the VoIP phone system and the internet needs, that the ability for the cable guys to cross-train into the electric and be a viable asset on a daily basis is almost totally gone. There's enough workload just in that department to keep those two guys operating just the cable department, so.
appreciate that,
And this was done in 2011,
correct.
and we were just getting into the VoIP stuff, and now we've really hit the ground running, and it's gotten extremely busy in that department, so. Just wanted to clarify that point.
Good feedback. Other questions, comments?
I often thought that the city ought to be able to produce electricity to meet peak demands somehow. Is there anything that's out there that's feasible for the city to do? Do we pay a much higher rate for electricity when our peak demand is high? And if we had something to knock those peaks off, it reduces the purchase of that power greatly. Is there any?
Correct.
And we mentioned last time possibly even something run on natural gas.
There are controllable technologies out there. Electricity is a business that's produced as needed on demand. It's dynamic, it's always fluctuating, it's never static. And that's why in the industry we look at the ability to store energy will totally change this system. Absent scalable energy storage, which is being worked on but really isn't commercially feasible yet, but the only other controllable technology that's out there would be some sort of combustion generation. And to do that is technically feasible or technically possible. Contractually with your power supply agreement, there may be some issues or some hurdles to cross to put that in place. You would,
Have you reviewed those contracts?
I have not. Not your specific contracts,
I think we have an all requirements contract with WPPI. that,
which would,
We would have to work with them on any kind of a load generation.
correct. Yeah, if you
They're
could,
not against it, but we definitely would, because of the contract, we'd have to work with them.
it would effectively try to structure the utility as an interruptible customer, if you will, from the broader network. You'd have enough generation in place to be able to run yourself. And some power supplier utility relationships recognize that opportunity and take advantage of it. But it would be, you would basically have to plan to be able to generate all of the city's requirements, assuming there's no water available.
Is there any
to
idea on
make it
what
feasible.
a system like that might cost to set up another generation facility to?
Off the cuff, based on some projects I've done in the last couple of years, I don't know that it would be cost feasible. I mean, the substation is capable of accepting generation, it does that now, which is great. But for an 8 megawatt controllable power plant, you know.
I don't think you
you're
need to
talking-
generate enough to produce for the whole city. I'm just looking for something to knock the peaks off, because
Oh,
again,
To
when
just
you,
peak shave it?
yeah, if you've got those peaks, you end up paying a lot more for the
You look
electricity
at
that
like
you
2
buy.
or 3 megawatt.
2 or 3 megawatt plant installed, you're talking 6 million off the cuff capital cost. If you've got the real estate close to the interconnection point.
Right.
Again, from a power supply standpoint, I think that could be problematic. But that's in the park.
Okay.
Dave, the numbers that you have in for the budget, are those contract rates?
Those are based on using, for the capital portions of the
For
project.
capital,
Those
yeah.
are based on using contractors, that's labor and material, so. There would be, I think, some savings on the capital cost, recognizing that they're based in 2012 dollars, so as we get further forward in time, we may trade contract for in-house labor versus just escalating costs.
But we're always looking at being a little bit behind on these projects, so they're gonna shift a little bit as we move forward.
Shift in terms of perhaps priority
Years out,
or,
yeah, if we decide to do, you know, projects that we didn't finish in 2012, 2013, are they gonna get pushed to 2013, 2014? Or are we gonna push them, you know, however the priority's gonna work out?
slide the whole calendar back. Understood.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, we need the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 15th, 2013, and the special meeting of April 29th, 2013.
In the April 29th special meeting, we didn't have any nominations or motions to excuse Mr. Hayes. I think we have to cover that.
In the regular meeting, they don't have me listed as being present either, and I was here. Because I made several motions during that meeting, for the April 15th regular meeting, so that's one correction.
I will make the motion to excuse Mr. Hayes so we can get it in there.
That meeting's already over.
Well, we have to do something to correct the notes though, Jeremy.
There was no motion made to excuse. There was no
So
excuse.
it's
Well,
really-
there should have been, shouldn't there? Because he wasn't here.
Well, I'm concerned more about the regular meeting where I'm not listed as being present. April 15th meeting.
Okay, did you get that, Mary?
Yep.
Okay, there's a motion made by Mark to excuse Dr. Hayes for the April 29th meeting.
I'll support.
Barry, roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Abstain.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
I'll make the motion, we accept the meeting with the changes, the minutes for both meetings, April 15th and April 29th.
Well, there wouldn't be changes on the 29th because we did the excuse today, so that.
Okay, then with the change that Doc suggested on April 15th.
Okay, Mark made the motion, is there support?
Support.
Motion made by Mark, supported by Dr. Hayes, roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Approval manifest 2013-09 in the amount of $507,343.02. Chris?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to make a note on page 5, under the electric. there is a charge for $40 for GoTech, a laptop repair, and GoTech is a company that I own, and I did work for the city. And that's all I have.
Hey, Jay, is there anything else that we need to do with that, with just,
No, I think that as long as he doesn't vote, just abstain from voting on that one.
okay. And, you need to update your information with the city as to what your, company is.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Mark?
I have one here on page 1 under professional service boardman and clerk, legal assistance for labor negotiations. I wanted to know if we are almost through that.
Well, we still have 2 contracts that we're negotiating, so I'd probably say not immediately.
Okay. And then down further on that same page, the Coleman Engineering study on the ice rink for the soil gas test, if that's a final payment of $2,800, or is that still taking place?
Nope, that's the initial payment for their work they've done to date, so that's still
Okay, so
ongoing.
that contract's still open?
Yeah,
And I think the bid was 5,000 on that,
4,300,
4,300? Okay.
or 4,700, I believe.
On page 4, under the fire department, Ray, there's the 2 camera batteries for $450. Is that a yearly thing that's done for certification of the camera or something like that?
I really don't know. I know that they work regularly with the batteries, but I don't know the details of it. So I'll get some information.
Okay, that's all I have.
Hey, Dr. Hayes?
No question.
Lee?
Most of them were asked and answered. I just got one comment here. I see we're still paying last month almost $2,000 to DTE. And just about every meeting this comes up, something's got to be done about this.
I brought it up at the, at our last budget hearing. I think one of our biggest issues that we've been able to identify is the computer workings, of the system.
Okay. Any other questions, Lee?
No.
Okay, I've got a couple this evening. On page 1, buildings and grounds, near the bottom. You have best heating installation of 6 thermostat key covers for $415. First question is, that seems like a lot for 6 plastic boxes.
I had some additional items on that. They were in here doing some work, and I said, get some boxes out, because I've had asked that question before, and that was part of what Lee brought up. I've been in here where one day the thermostat was up to 80 degrees. Somebody turned it up downstairs. I've had it up to 78 degrees, and that's why I've had them throw those boxes on. They're down. I didn't have them come in separate. They were in here working downstairs, and I said, hey, grab some of the Laphams and throw them up. So I think there's some additional items on that, but I'll get with you, though, or I'll look it up.
The next question I had was on page 3. Looks like we spent $840 on bags of salt. Why are we buying salt now? I think we're past the point where we're going to need to be salting things.
That was the last delivery that we had, we're just paying it now. Got billed for it, we're just paying it now.
Okay. Those are my questions. With that, I need a motion to approve the manifest.
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest number 2013-09 in the amount of $507,343.02.
Support.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes, but abstain from the GoTech invoice.
Mr. Bobolani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone from the audience have any questions on the minutes, manifest, or any of the agenda items for this evening? If not, there'll be a time for further question and comment at the end of the meeting on any subject. Okay, first on the agenda for this evening, we have appointments and presentations, the Dickinson County Bike Path Committee, Bob Warner, President. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We were approached last month from the Dix County Bike Path Committee that they had, would like to present a check to the city for $5,000 in the work that we've done, partnership with them. Bob, why don't you come on up? Yeah, come on up to the podium. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Werner, who's the president of the Bike Path Committee.
I don't know how we want to do this for a picture, but this is also Kyle Lindstrom. He's our vice president.
Number two.
Number 1 and 2. We've been working with the city of Norway for the last few years now, and we're assisting them with their trail and path development for biking, hiking, walking, whatever. And the city of Norway is known as the city of trails, right?
Yeah.
Mayor? And so in conjunction with that, along with the month of May is also known as Bike Month, and this Wednesday is Bike to School Day, and this Thursday is Bike to Work Day. So I wish we could give you more, but this is just a small appreciation of your
All the work that you guys have
Work.
done. We've been here with you guys, and you guys are very open and easy to work with, and we appreciate that, and hopefully we'll work more with you and help complete your trails and safe routes to school and all that other stuff. So we notice all your commitment with your rec group and that we've been at. So
right. We work with your recreation committee to update your rec plan and also your future master plan. And in conjunction with that, we also, our committee and the county planning commissioner also have to update our countywide bike path plan system, because you may not know this, but one of our county commissioners is also pushing for the governor's bike route through the lower part of the peninsula of the UP. So I'm going to try to set up a committee of the lower counties, whoever it is, to hopefully we can push to persuade the people in Lansing to get that bike route through Dickinson County, Delta County, Iron County, the southern part of the UP. There's been a study in Wisconsin, I think it was 2006. There was a projected, I think it was $2 billion that the biking, hiking people generated in the state of Wisconsin. So there is money out there, and the bikers do spend money. So we're trying to promote that in our area here to hopefully generate, tourism dollars, economic development, the whole thing. So, but constructing bike paths is not cheap. It takes a lot of money and a lot of willpower, right, Kyle? And hopefully we're just getting going. We took over the Tour de Dickinson last year as one of our major fundraisers. That's where most of this money is coming from for you, but hopefully we can continue the good relationship we have with the county bike path and the city of Norway for the future. So in doing that,
I was just going to say, this is our first time as far as a bike path group. We've just pretty much lived off of grants and different things, but getting the tour last year and all of our guys stepping up to the plate, we were able to generate quite a bit of cash last year. So this is our first time we can really start giving out to help others. So that's what we're going to try to do here. So it's finally nice to be able to give something back. So.
Well, we appreciate, the help you've given us. Kyle has come to a number of our meetings, our Parks and Rec meetings. I think our Parks and Recreation Committee appreciates the input. Also, knowing that the political realities of today. You mentioned it takes dollars. Well, you know, we're not able to fund a lot of dollars into the program, especially with what we're dealing with special road issues. And so, you know, we're looking for low impact, low dollar type of activities, and you know, we appreciate, I do, is working with the Parks Group to try and figure out how we can keep moving forward without, you know, without that kind of an impact. So how do we want to do it?
Somebody here have a camera where we can take a picture of you giving it to the mayor and Ray?
I think, Dr. Hayes, would you be
Or Dr.
willing to
Hayes? Yeah,
represent
you're-
the council?
push that, Doc.
Because this trails have been important to you for a long time, you've really been putting a lot of work into it.
But the whole council.
Well, we can get them all in there.
I get the whole council with us, or? I have a real check, by the way, I'll give it.
Give it to Mary.
Why don't you represent the council in the picture, Doug?
Is it made out to Mary? Is it made out to Mary, is it?
No, it's not made out to raise.
Okay, I don't need to be in the picture really, but. Sure. Well, let's get.
Want to be back there?
Yeah, probably back there would be better.
If you come back a little bit more.
Push it down, but you'll really hear it quick.
Then I'll hold on to the check.
Get us out. Are you gonna fire the chairs or the?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the chair's in the way, Ray?
Yeah, pull it up.
Back there, chairs.
Chair.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Not much, but. I could add a couple zeros on here, but that worked.
And I would like to thank the Dickinson County Bike Path, just for their donation to the city for our trail work and the stuff we've done. We really appreciate that. Okay, next on the agenda, we have 3 items in communications this evening. The first one is a special events application for the Boy Scout Camporee at Hanbury Lake Park. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that the Boy Scouts have been doing for a few years now. They've been utilizing the Hanbury Lake area for their camporee. Again, they're planning on being down there May 17th through the 19th. And as part of our requirements for using the park, we have them, or you approve their use through their special events application. So.
I don't have an issue with the event. I do just have one thing to bring up on our sheet, our special events information form. We have a typo, about halfway, 2/3 of the way down. Will this event use city property?
All right, you can point it out. Yeah.
Also on the, our rules sheet, we have a rule of no camping or
Number
campfires.
3, yeah. So I was gonna ask about.
I don't know if we have an exception in the permit that allows for that?
What's that?
No camping or campfires?
That's something that was a holdover from Marion Park,
Okay.
and that's something we'll have to address.
Well, it could be addressed in the motion, and
Yeah.
so we should give them a special use permit. In fact, I'll make that motion, we give the Boy Scouts the special use permit, with the exception, that they are allowed to have camping.
I'll support it.
Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by Mark. Roll call.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes?
Mr. Gotstein?
Yes.
Approval, QPAD, Norway Area Master Plan Update. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another one of projects that the Planning Commission is moving forward with. We're working with Norway Township through the Norway Area Planning Commission. The proposal from QPAD is basically to update the statistics mainly out of the, with the 2010 census. Cost is $1,062. Since we're paying half of that bill, it's $531.
And we have to do this update every
5 years.
5 years. We're coming up, that's pretty quick now, aren't we?
Yeah, and you don't have to do an actual update, you have to look at it, but because of the census change, we need to make the changes.
Why don't we also need to do some stuff with the non-motorized?
Yes, and that's not part of this specifically. Most of this work is just to bring up the details in the plan that made changes by the census.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll make a motion that QPAD be approved to update the Norway area master plan for a price not to exceed $531.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Resolution 2013-11, Sturgeon Falls Hydroelectric Project Change Order. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we said a couple meetings ago, the hydro project is now complete, pending a couple very small punch list items. We did have a discussion considering the liquidated damages penalty clause, and we had a meeting with representatives from Kaiser. They were requesting that council consider, because we didn't lose any monies off of with the unit being down, that we consider some sort of relief from the liquidated damages. One proposal that was thrown out and is brought before you tonight is to release 50% of that liquidated damage. Liquidated damages amounted to $100,100. They're requesting $50,000 of that be released. So the resolution before you tonight is, if you approve that, we'd sign the resolution and then have some final paperwork made up and signed by the mayor to cut that check.
Ray, on this job, what was the total dollar cost on the job? What the bid was, not to exceed?
Go ahead, Joe.
It was $7.5 million.
7.5,
Yes.
Just this specific one, because they ran over.
Oh, 400.
Oh, I thought you said the whole job.
No,
$400,000.
400,000.
Yes.
And what did they actually put into it?
They're into it about $135,000 more, so $530,000 is what they actually have into it.
And all we paid them was that 400?
400,
So
well,
Minus the
ate
minus the
$130,000.
$100,000 of penalties, so we really only paid them 300. We withheld 100.
But
They're
they-
asking for 50,000
They
of that.
ate $130,000?
Yes, that's correct.
With us not having any actual losses because of water level and trying to work with our local companies, I think this is a fair settlement. They were late, they should be penalized because they were late in delivering it. But just to work with them, and like I said, we didn't have any losses because of the water levels. I feel this is fair.
I'll agree with you, Jeremy.
Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that Resolution 2013-11 be approved, as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. That's the conclusion of our business this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on any subject? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lori Turry. My address is W3901 Johnson Road in Vulcan. I'd like to start by saying my condolences to Dr. Hayes and his family. But I'm here today to ask the council to expand their definition when it comes to the Oakcrest discount for green fees. previously approved a 20% discount for being a resident of Norway. I feel that being a business owner in Norway, I also pay taxes. I pay commercial rates, so I do not get the PRE discount. I pay higher utility rates. And whenever they came to businesses to try to support, we've always been there. They had no problem taking my money when it came to, work on signage out there. So I'm asking for the discount to be extended to business owners that live outside the city.
What's the,
Truthfully, Laurie, that's nothing I thought about, but you have a good point.
is there any other feeling?
I agree. I think that if we're gonna look for their support, I think that if they are taxpayers, they should get the discount also.
If this is something the council did want to do, it would be difficult this year because we're already in the cycle. But for next year, we could look at doing it then. I mean, we could do it this year too, but it would be more difficult. We do have budget hearings we're in right now, and we haven't discussed golf yet. But I'm sure we'll discuss this during the budget hearing and see what we come up with.
I'm not so sure we need to go that far with it. I think that Laurie has some valid points.
I agree.
Can I suggest, though, that you think about some caveat? You're a sole proprietor, it's pretty straightforward, but you might have a business owner with family members of the business. How far, if there's 3 or 4 family members of the business, again, it's pretty straightforward with a sole proprietor, but, there are a few other ones that buy memberships.
Yes, there are.
You just
There are
think
other businesses in which there are multiple owners, if that's what you are referring to, that
It's just for
some
us.
live within the city and some live without, yes. Do you have to prove ownership? That's up to the council.
As a staff member, we need to have clarity, because we just need clarity, that's all.
I'm asking for that clarity.
Yeah, I do think Ray's got a valid point, but I think it should be looked at for the taxpayers of the businesses.
Okay. Does anybody, no action tonight, are we going to discuss it further?
No, I think we need to come to an agreement on how far you're gonna go down,
Okay.
but the local businesses that do support the golf course and pay property taxes, I think
Right.
we should do something.
Okay, so we're not going to have any action this evening, but it will be discussed, because in the next week, we have 3 budget hearings.
Okay, do I need to come to the next meeting then and ask again?
You're welcome to come to the next meeting.
Okay,
I don't know where we'll stand on it at that point, but
Well, we're not gonna wait too long, I mean, you need,
I already bought my
you
membership.
bought your membership.
Oh, heck, yeah, I already went golfing this weekend, unfortunately at another place, because
Yeah,
I have to wait till Wednesday, but
we
okay.
won't wait too long.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope the council does extend, because I think as a business owner, we're very vital to our small town. I know there's only a handful of us that live outside the city, but we are just as important.
it
You
sounds
you
like
wouldn't consider moving back to Norway, would you?
it sounds like Hillary, it sounds like there's agreement that we need to do something. It's just exactly what we're going to do, and like Ray said, what extent down, we need to discuss. That's what we need to, I would say something is coming, but I can't say what exactly.
Okay, I can accept that.
I think part of our job as staff, Mary and I, to help you with some of those details. So we'll talk about, we'll work through it. I mean, feel free to give your comments of ideas if you might
I
have
have
some.
several.
Go ahead and we'll get those to these guys right away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Thank you.
Laurie.
Does anyone else wish to address the council on any subject? If you do, please come up to the podium. Anything? Okay, Lee.
Everybody get ready for the Madhouse Citywide Rummage Sale, another week and a half. And I see the Boy Scout Jamboree is going to be there. I think we hit the same weekend last year too. And I'm not sure if the Paul Lambert Golf Tournament is on that weekend. It was last year, but it's going to be a zoo around town, and just wish everybody luck. That's all.
Dr. Hayes?
I had a request that we get more chips on the playground again this year. There's some bare areas out there. And I also had a request from a citizen that we use the street sweeper more aggressively and more often.
It hasn't been out much this year because it was broke down. Today was the first day we've gotten it out because of repairs.
They never sweep my street anyway, but
And the sidewalks along US 2 are really bad too, Joe.
They were swept today also.
Not at 4:30 when I went by.
Which sidewalks are you talking about? Because everything in the downtown corridor?
Going out.
Oh, way
Up
out.
towards
No, we
the
didn't
way
get that far today. We'll get them for you.
Anything else? Mark?
I had the same concern that Doc did about the street sweeper. Looking at the executive memo, I'm totally against charging, the idea of charging $5 to utilize the compost site. I think it's foolish that you're going to charge the taxpayers. I think that it should be a benefit of paying the property taxes. I do think that actually, my opinion, is it hurt the county when they started charging for the same type of a thing for the lake permits. So I'm totally against that. I had somebody ask me about the golf course, why it was not going to be open till Wednesday. I know we talked about it on budget. I would like Ray to just kind of put it out there for the public on why it wasn't, because I was approached.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a real good answer other than, you know, the amount of work that Kurt felt like he needed to get in place prior to opening. I talked with Ryan last week, and based on the types of days, based on the kind of use that we get, even Ryan felt like if we hit Sunday, that was perfect. That would have been a great time to open. If we couldn't hit Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, you know, for sure by Wednesday. Okay, that Monday and Tuesday was kind of a, you know, toss-up because of people working, and they typically aren't taking those 2 days. I think that's kind of what went into it, is that maybe they didn't feel like they could hit Sunday, so maybe some of the gas was taken off the pedal a little bit. I still haven't had a chance to talk to Kurt, you know, about that. So that's the best answer I can give right now.
We don't really want to rush it to get it out there, because you don't want to damage the greens. And
I think that here's the reality of it. Especially if this happens a little earlier. I know now it seems like it's kind of a silly statement, but if you come on too early after the snow leaves and the frost, I mean, you can really damage the course. And in the past, you know, we've taken a lot of criticism about conditions, whether it's the greens, whether it's the fairways, whether it's the rough. We've taken a lot of criticism on the conditions. And so maybe there's a little bit of a conservative approach. The problem is this year, because of the late winter, you know, getting into it, everybody just wants to get out on the course. And so, you know, when you really look at it, they just want to get out and hit. They just want to get out and golf. I don't think they're worried as much about the leaves and some of the debris. They just want to get out there. So I think that's what's going through. He's trying to decide, you know, he doesn't want to damage the course, but he also has to get his guys out there and get some of that work done. So, I mean, like I said, I haven't had a chance to talk to him since Wednesday, Thursday last week.
And then I have a couple more here, Jeremy. The spring cleanup dumpster, Joe, is there any kind of a plan? Is that coming down to the shop, like right after the garage sale week, or what's the plan?
We're going to do the same thing we did last year, Mark. We kept the dumpster there pretty much all summer long. So after the spring cleanup, people will be able to take stuff down. I talked to Dave this morning. He was commenting about how fast The dumpster's been filling up. I told them to get another dumpster there for this weekend, so there's 2 dumpsters.
So the dumpster's there right now?
Yes.
Is that on the TV channel, do you know?
Yes.
It is?
Yes, it
Okay.
is, yes.
Okay. I found it quite interesting. I was looking over the police log here that Mr. Schaefer put out. And in 2012, we had, for April of 2012, we had 2,636 miles put on. And for April of 2013, we had 5,090 miles put on, double. And the man hours for last year was 800 for April. And April of this year was 828.5. And we had double the mileage put on.
I noticed that too, that.
I
the
thought that was
mileage
pretty interesting.
The mileage
I-
number
I-
was a big.
I don't know where we're going for that kind of mileage with only 28 more hours for the month. But we put on that many more miles. And then I had, we didn't receive any reports. I was interested to see what amount of time was put forth, Joe, for the patching. We didn't get a street department report, and we didn't get electric
That
department
was in
report.
the last, that was in the
That
last
was in the
meeting.
last one?
That was in the last one.
Okay, okay.
I
I'd
turned
seen
it
that the
in.
police was in this
There
one.
was a, because of the way the 3 weeks, we had 3 weeks in April, there was a miss, you know, in the report. Some of them came in, I put them in. They were
Okay.
right at the time we had
Okay.
the last meeting. So then this one I had, in fact, I
Because
even doubled
typically
up on
they're
the
all in
water.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was because of the timing of the meetings.
And I really hope that, like I said before, on that permit for the compost, $5, I think that we need to talk about that before it goes too far. See what everybody else is interested in. That's all I have.
Hey, Chris,
A couple of questions. On that soil testing, Ray, up at the ice rink, have we gotten any preliminary results on that?
It's just verbal right now.
Okay.
They're still working on
When do
some
we
details.
expect to have some?
I don't know, probably within a couple weeks, I would imagine.
Okay. Joe, the sewer project, is that moving forward, coming up here now?
The sewer project, there's several of them moving forward.
The efficiency one that we approved in the budget.
Yes, yeah, that is moving forward. Ray, I haven't heard anything on the latest, on the engineering part of that.
There's a bid, it's actually out to bids right now. Just need to look and refresh my memory on the schedule. See if it's on this particular one. It's actually, we have a bid opening this month. Maybe it's not on this one. But we have a bid opening this month, probably within the next week, week and a half.
Engineering is all complete then?
Oh, yeah, we're out for bid.
Okay.
So,
And then on the water SCADA project we approved last meeting, how are we looking on that?
I met with PJ Cortons, or not PJ Cortons, I met with Johnson Controls last week. Went over the project completely with him, site visits on every location, talked through the whole project, and we're moving forward with the process of getting procurement of the instruments and moving forward with that. It's not a really big project as far as man-hours is concerned, getting it in, so I'm thinking that probably 2 to 3 weeks to get the equipment, and we could see something starting next fiscal year, July, completion, somewhere in that time frame.
And there weren't any additional costs or equipment or software that we had to purchase?
The only thing that is out there that was additional, and I have not gotten a price yet from them on, was the programmable logic controllers are proprietary, meaning that they're the only ones that can work on them if they need to be programmed. They make their own stuff, but it's very specific. I asked them if our programmer, who we have for the hydro, could do that, and he said, yes, he could do it, but we would have to purchase the software to do it, and then he'd have to go to a 2-day school at Johnson Controls to learn how to do it. and I did not receive a cost for that. So basically, it just means that if anything needs to be changed or repaired, we have to, excuse me, go to them to get those repairs done. We just can't go to someone that is a control person. So
And we'll have some pricing for that?
I can get pricing for that if
Yeah.
you think it's, okay, all right, I will get the pricing.
Because I'm assuming we're gonna have to have people come in periodically to,
Things happen.
Yeah.
Technology, I mean, so yes, I can get the pricing for that.
that's all I had, Chairman.
Most of what I wanted to bring up was already talked about, but the one thing I will like to just let the public know on, we do have, like I said, 3 budget hearings coming up. One Tuesday morning, Tuesday the 7th in the morning, Thursday the 9th at night, and Tuesday the 14th at night. So if anyone is interested in attending the budget hearings. And the schedule is posted outside on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Jeremy, I got one more thing. The other thing that I would like to bring up is in the used equipment sale this spring that we normally put together, I'd like to see us talk about getting rid of the excavator that's been laying down there that's just used at the compost
We
site.
don't have enough for a sale.
What's that?
We're not gonna have a sale. We don't have enough for a
We
sale.
don't have enough for sale. I still would like to see us do something with that excavator that we've used very little and get that money back into the system for the streets. It's not gonna be a lot of money, but it may do 1 block.
Joe, anything?
The flood waters at the hydro are receding. We made it through about a week and a half of close calls. Every gate we had was open, all the floodgates. We went through it real well, put in a lot of overtime, and I was fortunate enough to be able to use staff from the water department and the street department to help keep it going. We were running 3 shifts down there, 4-hour shifts through the night to keep all the debris off the racks, to keep the hydro producing power. So it went very well, and I would like to thank the guys for putting their foot forward and helping out. So
Joe, that rip in the one gate, did you get a better idea as to how bad it is?
yes, I took a good look at it when it was totally out of the water. There's a rubber seal on the bottom of the 24-foot gate. Apparently, when it was about 3/4 of the way open, a large log must have came through and hung up on it. It tore the seal, the rubber seal part off for about a 4-foot stretch, and it took the metal where the rubber's bolted to the other piece of the gate, and it ripped that off for about 2 feet, and it's kind of bowed out. So the gate will not seal.
So now
in
that's
its
something
current
we're gonna
condition.
have to get that fixed before we get to low water.
Yes, it would be nice to have it fixed before that. I can lower it, but it won't seal itself. There'll always be a large leak there. It's a matter of timing on that thing, because if there's high water and I open the gate all the way, you can't work on it because it's just too dangerous of a spot to be in with 10,000 cubic feet of water rushing underneath you to work on it. It's only about 2 feet off the surface of the water, fully open. So what has to happen is it's called a coffer dam. They actually put a dam or another gate in front of that gate and dewater that part so they can actually get down and work on it. And we would have to do that. I have to get pricing to do that.
Okay, Mary? Jay? No, nothing, thank you very much. Ray?
Couple things. This weekend, we had a beautiful, beautiful weekend. And Joe, I'm not sure any of your guys really experienced that with all the work they did, right?
No, they were pretty much at the hydro the whole time.
That was a big, busy week, so they really did an excellent job. So I want to give everybody kudos from all the departments. They went down and helped. Realize when we get that kind of high water, what kind of stress that goes on down at that dam. So we really do appreciate that a lot. We have a meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. I think I put that in your guys' report. for the Main Street project. That's going to be starting here in a couple weeks. Contractor and the engineer will be here. We sent letters out to property owners that are within that construction area. You can talk to the contractor, get an idea as to schedule and what's planned. I know one thing that's already been sort of mentioned to us is there's some upset people about, as part of the work scope, we got some alleys and parking lots and some of the street, the streets right next to that, like say Iron Street, not getting addressed. This is a DDA project. This is the DDA district. The grant is specific, and I don't know how else to address that. So, but it is something that's needed on the Main Street area. So, I just wanted to get that out there because I'm sure that's something that's been talked about or will be talked about, especially after we start the project. But again, it's certain roads get certain designations and certain fundings, and we can't just interchange those. So that's part of the business. Outside of that, we hope that good weather picks up, stays up, and we've got citywide rummage sale coming up. That should be good for the community. Cleanup is going on. Do not rake your leaves or yard waste onto the street. We do not pick up off the street. Whereas I'm seeing a few places doing that, don't do that. So that's all I have.
Okay, with that, we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Motion made by Mark, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Babalani?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.